get on with it. The other thing that you will notice today is that radio is a fantastic thing, and we always sound like we get it right the first time, and I'm about to reveal how many times it takes us to get it right, so do bear with us.
I think we need to be really conscious about what the key messages now coming out of Leave are. They want to raise standards to UK production, so we know we've seen more welfare being pushed through. So if I know it's changing sector now, but if I look at the broiler welfare code that was put forward by the industry, as soon as environmental groups latched onto it, the government pulled it, and then they're going to put it back into the hands of government officials to manage. I think we face a double whammy of increased regulation standards to whether we're producing free-range eggs or whether caged eggs or whatever we're doing, barn eggs, increased regulation in the UK, but opening up our markets to global products. And that's a real challenge, because if Boris Johnson, if Michael Gove is promising people cheap food, farmers are going to pay the price, the environment's going to pay the price, and rural Britain will pay the price as well. Look, I've been really strong on this. I've not been making an argument for staying in the EU for getting handouts. I think the future of British agriculture lays in the market. That's why free-range egg producers have spotted where consumers are moving. They're intelligently, they're smartly building businesses that are focused on where consumer trends are going. But it will be catastrophic when farmers, when the free-range movement makes those investments and then cheaper produce from overseas is dumped on our market. So we do need to collaborate with our European partners. I know how much the French, the Germans, the Irish farmers, the Dutch, the Danes will go overseas and make sure that their industries are not destroyed by trade deals with the United States or Mercosur or even Asia. And sometimes our markets can, it might be processed egg product that comes into the market, but our markets can be damaged if we just follow a cheap food policy.
Thank you. My name is Lydia Cooper. My question is, if we do vote Leave, what kind of retaliation do you expect that we'll get from disgruntled French farmers, disgruntled Spanish population?
To answer Olivia's question really directly, it's important, because if we're bringing New Zealand lamb in, the notion that we're then shipping 38% of our lamb into the French market without them being really determined to make sure what standard it is and what quantity it's coming in, and who the hell is going to police it when they tip that first cargo up on the motorway and start burning it. At the moment, the European Union rules guarantee the access. And I remember in 2007, down in the West Country, what happened when Foot and Mouth shut the markets to our beef and lamb. The prices fell out of bed by 40% overnight. And the notion that we're going to be allowed free access without any control whatsoever is just a pipe dream. I don't expect retaliation. I expect them to want to fight their corner, particularly if we go down the Michael Gove, Boris Johnson route of bringing in cheap, low-standard product from anywhere around the world.
If we remain, they're not going to be very happy either, because we've put them through this meal of having to go through a debate. And my view is like having a business partner that you've been in business for 40 years and you take each other to court. In the end, you decide to stay together. Unfortunately, we have making that break. And if we stay in, they're going to treat us appallingly. And I think that all our concessions that our Prime Minister got won't happen. And they say we'll have more influence by staying in. We've been there 40 years, we've had very little influence. And it's time for us as farmers to put country and before ourselves and our farm. It's not going to be easy leaving. It's going to be a lot harder staying, because we're going to have less and less influence. The money in the agricultural budget is going to have to be shared with a lot more farmers. And in 10 years' time, if we stay in the EU, there'll be very little subsidies for us.
But actually the European Union, one of the reasons we have regulations and standards is to keep driving that more level playing field. And, you know, we sometimes drag our feet. So let's be honest about that. But where I think Meryl raises a really interesting point is that we at the moment have a relatively supportive government. I think the Prime Minister does, enjoy the countryside. He does understand the issues. But boy, what would a Labour government, the Tories at the moment can't agree on what day of the week it is, so we might well have a Labour coalition with Nicola Sturgeon.
The legislation is all there to make it nice for animals, but if it isn't enforced, it's miserable for animals, and that's what's happening. So in the case of sow stalls or any method of production, what we need to do, outside the European Union is prevail on our supermarkets. Our consumers are saying, we don't like mega dairy herds, we don't like this, we don't like that. Well, translate that into assurance schemes that represent what the consumers do want. That is the way to approach it, from the retailers, not from legislation.
I think the first thing you have to realise is that free-range egg production, whilst it's very big in the UK, in fact it's now the majority, many countries in the European Union there isn't any free-range production. It's a colony-based industry, and so we are being legislated over by people who don't really understand the whole concept of large-scale free-range egg farming. So that's a big problem. The bureaucrats haven't got a free-range unit in mind when they're legislating on egg production. Well, the financial effects, first of all, we will make an immediate saving on the net contribution. I mean, people argue that net figure is between £7 and £9 billion a year, but that's money that will be kept in the country. The next thing we have to realise is that we are a very large customer of the European Union. We are their single biggest customer. We import, I believe, about £32 billion worth of food from them and export them about £16 billion. They are desperate for our custom. Those grape farmers in France, those fruit farmers in Spain, they need the British consumer to keep on going into British supermarkets and buying their produce, and they will not want to put that at risk. And there's an awful lot of scaremongering talked about, oh, we're going to lose the single market. The single market is open actually to all sorts of people. The Chinese sell £300 billion worth of goods into the single market, and they're not part of it. You do not have to pay contributions into the European Union to sell to that single market. You do not have to have free movement of people to sell into that single market. This is some scaremongering that's being put about.